Hi, Charlotte. Thank you so much for joining me on the Online Business Show. Huge thank you to you for coming. And although I know you very well, I would love to kind of pass along the microphone to you to introduce yourself to some of the audience that maybe haven't met you in the past.
Oh, thank you so much, Bethan. It's really a pleasure to kind of be here with you today and for sharing a little bit of our sort of story as well. So I'm Charlotte McCann. I run Seen Abounds networking community with my husband. But yeah, we basically like to make sure that you get lots of connections, exposure and support as a business owner. That's all what Seen Abounds is about.
Yeah, and I can speak to that. I've been a member of Seen Abounds for I think over 2 years at this point.
Yeah.
I've been in Charlotte's network and seeing how the business has grown and how many connections have been made through all the people that are a part of See No Bounds is lovely. And whenever I have a conversation with someone who's looking for regular networking events, you always come to mind as you should check out the See No Bounds, which actually prompted what we're going to talk about today. So Charlotte is absolutely a master connector of people. She's always looking out for how you can connect people to another, and it's also a big part of her business. So it just made sense to kind of talk about that networking and connection building when it comes to businesses, and especially online businesses who maybe don't have so much face-to-face time with customers or suppliers or things along those lines.
I think, as like you, Bethan, because you're obviously traveling and working at the same time, it's so hard for business owners sometimes because it can be really lonely. And especially with an online business, you're in your little sort of solo kind of place and you don't really know. You need to get out there and be able to sort of be with other people. And I think the other thing that we're getting is that it's really time efficient. You get 4 one-to-ones. What we wanted to create was something where you can have enough time to know if you would like to have a further one-to-one with a person, and if you can maybe collaborate somehow, if you maybe can support the person with other connections. And within sort of having 4, 7 to 8 minutes one-to-ones, you definitely get that, I think.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think it's really interesting as well when we talk about online businesses. When you're just getting started, it can be really easy to feel like you're surrounded by people who are really far ahead of you. The first thing you do when you set up an online business is you go and follow all of the gurus in your space. You go and follow competitors so that you can see what they're up to. But usually when you're kind of searching on, I don't know, Instagram, LinkedIn, or even Google, the people that are going to crop up are going to be the people that have huge audiences and have been doing it for a long time. So it can feel almost more intimidating then that you're in it on your own and it's just you and you're just getting started. And the only comparison you have are people who are 7-figure businesses that are huge with these millions of audience to talk to. And yeah, it can become really disheartening, really scary. Getting in a networking group with other online business owners starts to show you people who are either right where you are or just that little bit ahead that you can strive to, and it feels realistic to hit where they're at today.
You were saying about the fact that when you're new to networking, it can be really intimidating. Yeah. And I think that's the reason why we do a non sort of 60-second pitch. I don't know anyone who likes doing a 60-second pitch. If you were listening into this and you like that, then please let me know, because I'd love to hear from you. But we do a 10-second intro, so it's not scary. You literally just come and say, hi, I'm Charlotte from Seen Abounds. That is all. And then you just talk like we do now in a one-to-one. And that's really where the magic happens for me anyway.
Agreed. But I want to take it back a little bit for people who are listening and maybe they're in the business world, they've not come from a kind of background where networking is familiar to them. What is networking? What would you break the meaning down of networking to be?
Networking is, you literally start networking when you're a baby. When you're sitting in the sandpit and you're talking to people, and when you start jabbering, you know, before you even can speak, that's networking. You're starting to build relationships. You do it all your life without even thinking about it. And when we actually had a Kickstarter working with us, she came to me and said, Charlotte, did you know that most of the first job offers that people get out of uni or college or whatever actually comes through networking? She had no idea. And I said, that's because you network every day, all day, from when you're born, more or less, but you just don't know it. And that's why it shouldn't be scary. It's all about building relationships. So it's just like talking to someone. I think the worst thing about networking is, for me, when somebody comes up and literally interrupts a conversation or something, go, here's my business card, I do IT. If you want IT services, please give me a call. You need to build the relationships. But it can also, I think as well, it's important to say that, you know, there's lots and lots of different networks. Some networking can be very much like a coffee morning, which is great if you are lonely in your business and you kind of need that support. For me, it needs to be a bit of both. It needs to be building relationships, but with a business focus. So you actually have that in common as well. I think that's important for me anyway.
Yeah. And traditionally, when we refer to networking, it can mean a million different things, but often people collate it to this experience of sitting in a room in a circle, usually, and going round and kind of doing that 60-second introduction, that elevator pitch, explaining their business, who they are, what they do, and who they serve. Feels stereotypically that the old school idea of networking feels very grey suits, feels very intimidating, feels like you have to be super comfortable with public speaking, that you have to be an early bird because they're usually at like 6 a.m, the traditional networking groups that you see pop up. Not for me. Definitely won't find me at one of those for multiple reasons. But I think it's changed an awful lot. In even the time I've been in business, I have seen night and day changes to networking, from the rise of online networking groups that typically are a lot more casual, all the way through to kind of themed networking groups, even like my own. Like we have themes every month, and the focus isn't about making intros, it's about having chats and speaking as a smaller kind of session. What would you say are the kind of typical markers, the typical groups that you can look out for in a networking setting?
There's so many groups, and I think the main thing when you're starting out is to find groups that you enjoy being part of, and then obviously you will need to look at your return on investment in terms of time and business. But you can't just go, you know, to a networking group and say that's not working. It's going to take time to build that relationship. And some networking groups, that can take a year, 2 years sometimes, I've heard. But I think it's when you belong to something, you naturally want to pass business to each other because you get to know each other. I think for a lot of people, when they go to networking, especially like you said, if it's really early in the morning and you're kind of like a bit sleepy and you think, oh gosh, what am I doing here? Don't go if you feel like that, because you're not going to have a great time. Go with the purpose of being sort of, right, okay, I'm really looking for someone like, you know, that can help me with being on a podcast, for example. You know, go there to not speak to 25 people. So, you know, if it's online and stuff, go just to get a handful of people that you can then follow up with. So I think purpose is a big thing for me as well when it comes to networking.
You've given me the perfect segue to ask, what do you think is the primary purpose of attending a networking meeting?
To know who you're looking for. So, you know, you have different, so people always say be specific, and you and I know that we can help. And the more specific you are, so we always ask our sort of networkers that come to our network to put in a chat of who they want to be connected with, what sort of exposure they're looking for, and what support they need in their business right now. And that's the strength of kind of being able to connect them to the right person. Because we talk to people, and this is quite an interesting fact, everybody, and if you're a networker, you probably know a lot more people, but every person on the planet usually has a connection of an average of 200 people. So don't think it's all about the people in the room or the people that you're meeting online. It's about who they know.
Who they know. Very nice.
Exactly. Definitely.
Love that. And I think you kind of touched on something there. I think it's really important to consider the purpose of a networking event as being tied into your larger business strategy. What are your focuses for your business, and going in with that as being the primary purpose. Typically, in my experience, I tend to see that there's different networking groups have their own kind of focus for it. There are definitely some groups that are focused on swapping leads. There are definitely some groups that are focusing on just meeting people and making connection. And I think there are groups as well that are focused on like almost locality and focused on that idea of community within the local area and business, especially in face-to-face meeting groups when you see them come up. Moving on to another question for you that might be a difficult one to answer. What do you think makes a good networking session? We've talked about maybe some of the typical old school networking sessions that have been phased out quite significantly, the grey suit, the yawny mornings. What would you say makes a good networking session as opposed to people who maybe have been to one of those and didn't enjoy it?
I think it's all about the host, to be honest with you. I think
Oh,
it's all about the host, of who they, how they run it, how they read the room. And when I say read the room, I mean, that's something that I've been used to all my life, because my background is hospitality and events, as you know. But reading the room on the screen is also really important. If somebody's looking a bit slumped, sitting in the corner, kind of looking down, you can read that. And the other thing I think is, if you're going to make it work for you and it's going to be a great networking event for you, look at who's coming. If you can see who's going to attend beforehand, maybe connect on other channels beforehand. So connect on LinkedIn, connect on Cinebounds. If it's Facebook that they're on, use the channels to kind of go, hi, I know that you're coming to XYZ. Would you like to connect? I would like to get to know you a bit more. So by the time you actually get to the event, you already feel like you're familiar with the room. That's really important, I think.
Love that. I think that's something that I probably don't do enough, is check the networking groups that I go to. I do make an effort to try and go to new sessions regularly, and I ended up going to one last week that was called Women in Business. Walked in, it was run by a man, but it was not only run by a man, it was run by a man about local North London businesses, but there was nothing about it on the description that I'd kind of pointed out and grasped me. If I'd done my research and looked at who was attending, I would have put two and two together and probably not gone. So I think that's probably a really important step that a lot of people miss. They just, it's free, I'll go. It's free, I'll go, rather than kind of taking the time to think about whether it's a good fit.
That's interesting that you said as well, because there are so many free networking sessions out there. And, by all means, try them all. And, when you're new in business, you're making connections all the time. Try what works for you. I do find some of the free networkings are really supportive. Some of the free networkings are very much like a coffee morning. And a lot of the people, the feedback that you get is the fact that they've been going for 2 years, but they haven't got a single lead. But it's okay, isn't it? Because you're not paying anything for it. So you don't need the return of investment. Just go for the enjoyment of having that, coffee morning, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person. It's the purpose again. So I'm kind of coming back to that. If that works for you because you want that, that's perfect.
Yeah, I do think people have to be careful with that concept of going to too many free networks, especially on the regular. Like you said, to try them out, see what works for you. But people who go religiously, they kind of have a networking group a day that they go to in all free sessions. There is no cost to the business, but there is a cost of your time. And I quite often say to people that I'm working with, actually, when they're snowed under of going to networking sessions and not seeing any leads come from it, any of their ideal customer even being in the room, I'm like, okay, but what would you charge for an hour then? That's how much the networking session actually cost you. Then you have to consider the follow-ups and all the one-to-ones you do afterwards with people. If they're not getting you anything either, you could start to look at 5, 10, 20 hours a week, depending on how active you are. And definitely some of the networkers I've met do literally go to every session they can and one-to-one with every person who attends. And I don't always think that that's the best use of time.
Definitely not. And again, that's the purpose of where you're going, isn't it? So try them out and see what works for you and where you kind of, where you like spending your time. But you touched on something that's so important, which is my kind of other thing. So it's the follow-ups. If you're going to go to networking, you have the purpose of why you're there. You're introducing your business, you're being visible. But if you don't follow up, you are not going to make any connections and it's not going to work for you. You can show up every day or every week for 2 years. If you don't follow up, you're not going to get any return on your investment, whether it's in time or, monetary.
Yeah, I love that. It's almost like you follow someone on Instagram and just expect that now you can be mates or you can connect in some certain way. You just hit the follow button and done nothing else. I want to kind of go back to, we're talking about the purpose a lot. This keeps coming up as we're talking. I fully believe that networking when you're first getting started is necessary and almost becomes, for some people, it feels like a necessary evil, but it is necessary all the same because, as we said at the very beginning, you are on your own. You can become really overwhelmed with what you're doing can become lonely. All of those things tie in. Why would you say that networking is a non-negotiable or networking is necessary for business owners?
I've seen a lot of people when they get busy and they have then a successful business, they stop networking. Or say, for example, it's a business and they have 10 contracts just, and they fully book, they stop networking, they stop making new connections, stop being visible, and then 3 contracts cancel.
Yeah.
And then you haven't got anybody else to go to. And then it's sort of like, oh gosh, I got to start again. Keep it consistent, be out there. You've got to be visible if you have a business, because you never know what's going to happen. You can't put all your eggs in one basket, as they say. If something happens, you just don't have a business. And I've seen that happen so many times. And I think you said about it being, some people see networking as sort of like, oh gosh, I've got to go networking.
Yeah.
It's just something, oh God, I could get up, at 6 o'clock in the morning. Again, choose something that you find that works for you. So you actually enjoy going. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I agree. That's interesting. I definitely look at it as a bit of a, pragmatic, marketing, data-led, all of that sort of stuff comes into play. You talked earlier actually about how everyone has 200 people in their network to get started. I think of it that way. So I think when you're getting started, you use your network that already exists. You reach out to those 200 people. Certain percentage of them will convert to customers. And then you run out of people to talk to about your business. You run out of leads that you can offer your service to. When you're getting started, networking is a really great way to just widen that net a little bit, well, excuse the pun, widen the net, without necessarily having built your audience online just yet. That tends to come later. Right, we've talked about how you are the master networker. You run networking sessions, you're always dropping into my inbox I can speak to with, hey Bethan, I'd love you to meet such and such, and you're great at that, and it's clear how passionate you are about it. Why do you love networking so much? What is it for you that kind of makes it tick that you're so interested in this as a business owner?
I think this is a really interesting question, actually, because I didn't enjoy networking and I didn't like the 60 seconds. But I have also, like I mentioned earlier, you start networking from when you're a baby, when you're sitting there chatting to your mates. And that because I love people, I absolutely love people. I love business and I love lots of different businesses. And the main thing that I think is that so many business owners don't know where to go for support. They're not very good at sometimes asking for help. I'm a good listener. That's also really, really important when you run networking sessions. Listen to what the people are looking for, because is how I'm going to be able to help them get the connections that they want. And that's my main strength, is that I actually listen out for what you're looking for. So by putting into a conversation, I will sort of say, well, what are you looking for at the moment? And people sometimes go, well, I'm not really sure. And you go, well, do you need support with anything? And go, actually, yeah, I'm really looking for a new accountant. I can help you with that. And you can always find, and it's about putting the right people together as well, because I know there's networking groups where you kind of have one seat and that sort of policy. For me, it's all about people buy from people. And that's what I've been doing all my life, is basically connecting people to one another that I know will get on. I love kind of reading people's personality, get to know them. And then I go, actually, you know what, because with one person is going to get on with one. It's the same like with choosing hairdressers, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And nowadays you can stalk each other, if you want to use that word, but everybody kind of follow each other on different social media. I know you do a lot of YouTube content, obviously, and people will find out about you. They will be there lurking in the background thinking, oh, I actually really like this girl, really knows what she's talking about. And then they go, oh yes, I'm going to work with Bethan. But that investment can take quite a long time. But it's about that. And that's why I love networking, because you're constantly kind of out there being visible. You're showcasing your business. You're giving your business exposure.
Yeah. And it even gives you the opportunity for people who aren't maybe the most natural marketers. They don't find copywriting an interest of theirs, so they struggle to communicate what they do. Usually if you put those sort of people in a networking session and you give them the opportunity to, whether it's in a 60 seconds or whether it's in a one-to-one, what do you do? Explain what you do, and they thrive, and they can break down their business so perfectly that you're like, oh, okay, I get why I would need this. In other places, it might be a lot more difficult for them. So yeah, if you're listening and that rings a bell to you, that you really struggle to kind of get the message across of what you do, networking is a great chance to have that extra second or two to be able to give the context and break things down.
You mentioned something really important as well. I think I had somebody who was new to networking who joined one of our groups. She privately messaged me before we were going. And the reason why she joined was because she only had to do 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And she then messaged me and said, oh, I'm really nervous about going into the one-to-ones because she's very new in business and she's very young. And I said, just ask the person about their business. I have never yet met a business owner who doesn't like to talk about their business. So if you're really nervous, give them an option and listen. And then you will actually, by listening, you will find out that actually you have common ground.
That's a really important one, because I think a lot of the fear around networking comes from fear of the unknown, if they just don't know what to expect. What would you say are the first few steps to preparing if you're going to your first networking meeting? What are the sort of things that you recommend people prep for and keep in mind?
So finding out the people that are going to be there, obviously you get lots of different businesses, but if you can somehow find out who's attending, I think that's a really good way to start, because you can look at their profiles, you can have a look beforehand on what their industry is. So you maybe have a few conversation starters, but I think it's also important to not let it go into the coffee morning session then. So also then ask, how can I support you? Is there anyone that you want to connect with at the moment?
And even your introduction, I think, is worth preparing. You might not know how long your introduction section is going to be, or whether it's 10 seconds or 60 seconds, whether it includes a sales pitch or not. But I would say jot down just a couple of bullet points that you want to make sure you touch upon. So then even if you script it and you end up, oh Christ, I've only got 10 seconds and I scripted for 30, you don't have to worry. You've just got these 2 or 3 bullet points you need to include. Usually at least your name, your business, and who you serve is a good kind of starting point.
And I think also be quite specific about who you serve, because I know that maybe most businesses can serve so many different genres, but if you're being specific, you're more likely that people are going to come to you and say, oh, actually, I know someone that can help with that.
Yeah, and that ties in actually to a different video that I will link on the screen at this point that I've got about ideal customers and how you can decide kind of who your perfect audience would be and how you can kind of that and communicate that is a video that already exists as well. So you guys can go and have a little look at that if you're struggling. Okay, so moving on then, we've already touched upon that the networking is part of your business. Can you break that down for us a little bit and tell us what that looks like for See No Bounds?
Yeah, sure. So basically how it started was we started doing Get Social events for See No Bounds and the members. The reason being was that we wanted to kind of showcase people what they can do on the platform. The social events became hugely popular and we were having sort of 50, 60 people attending. And we thought people would come and go, oh, you're going to do more networking. So unlike all other sort of networking businesses, we actually set out to be a community and a network, not a networking business. The networking came from the customer's demand and for the people wanting to be introduced to each other, which is a really, really lovely way to kind of bring it in. So the natural step for us was to bring out networking groups. We've named them after train stations. The reason being is basically we can work from anywhere in the world, but some people do like to connect within local areas. They are all online on networking. So with the networking package that we have, you can basically join any of our networking events online. We will be bringing face-to-face meetings once all our hubs that we've created have sort of formed. But the feedback that we're getting is the fact that it's time efficient, it's an hour, and you're getting leads because you already feel like you have the know, like, trust. So with the networking package, yes, you can come along to all of the online events. And I think that's quite flexible because like you said, sometimes you stop yourself from going to networking because you're busy. And if you don't have to have a specific day, you can drop in and out of lots of different groups. It just makes it a little bit easier to fit into your day.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the people listening will be online businesses themselves, may travel themselves. So having that flexibility of you don't have to be there every Wednesday at the same time, and that's going to have to be a staple in your calendar from now on, is really nice, because they can be travel days, or they can be days where I'm like, no, I just have to do client work today and I can't do anything else. And yeah, there are a lot of groups out there that if you sign up, you kind of either have to attend or you have to send someone in your place. And that can become its own stressor when you're just getting started with networking and getting comfortable. So I think it's a nice middle ground of making sure that people have the flexibility to be able to attend more if they want to, but also just to make it work for them.
So if you are sort of looking to branch out your network, there will be groups that are not just sort of typical morning groups and things, but you have more flexibility to be able to sort of join as an online business owner wherever you are in the world.
Okay, so where then should they look for networking meetings? Things that come to mind are obviously LinkedIn events and Eventbrite as might be a good start to be able to search for places. Where would you say are good ports of call for looking for networking events?
I'm obviously going to say Cinebaum's events board. Your events are there. Lots of our members are there. We're actually one of the only networks that support other networking groups. A lot of networking groups are sort of frightened about doing that. I think as a business, you need to be in more than one networking group.
So with that in mind, looking for the right group and the right people, when you're looking at a networking group, you're seeing the description of what's going to happen. What are some kind of red or green flags that people could look out for a session being the right fit for them?
I think so. The red flags, I would say, if you're going to some networking, like you said, some networking groups expect a lot from you. So look up beforehand what they actually, what's the commitment, and obviously the cost as well can be a factor for your business. So you might be coming as a guest and you think, oh, this is a really good fit for me, but actually they might want a commitment of you bringing referrals, bringing subs that might not fit with your business. So, those are kind of the red flags I think I would probably look out for.
A couple more questions about what people should look out for when they're getting started and how they can prepare. A really common question that I get asked a lot and couldn't tell you the answer is, how often should you go to networking sessions?
I think you need to be consistent, and that with different networks, that's really the key. And because so say for example it's a monthly networking, you need to kind of commit to it if you are going, because it takes time to build relationships. Again, what I mentioned with Cinebaum's is the fact that you're part of a platform, so you can dip in and out on different days. That's quite unusual, because most networking groups will be weekly, monthly, every 2 weeks, that kind of thing. And once you make that commitment to a group, stick with it, because if you don't, you will get known very quickly you will become unreliable.
Yeah.
Even if you're not, you will give the impression that you're kind of not really fully committed to the group, and people will not refer your business if you're not committed. And that's why the groups that kind of have very strict regimes around networking, they do pass each other business. But that doesn't work for everyone. So, you need to be consistent with the commitment to the group that you choose to be in, or the groups that you choose to be in.
What would you say in terms of frequency, though? So if I was a business owner just getting started, I don't go to any networking meetings. Should I be shooting for just going to one a month, or would one a week be more appropriate? Somewhere in the middle. What are your thoughts on that sort of side of how often should you attend?
I think it depends on your business, to be honest with you, and how many connections that you need. If you're new in business, you usually have a bit more time because you don't maybe have as many customers. So if you're new in business, utilize the time that you have then, that's so precious, to make new connections.
I agree. I think it does definitely depend on how much you want to grow, how quickly, all sorts of different factors. How much time you have comes into play. Well, that kind of sums us up for today. We've given you all the tools of how you can get started with networking, the why and the what, all of the basic details that you need to know. But I can't sign off without kind of passing off to Charlotte to tell the people watching, where can they find you? If they're looking to network after today, where should they look for you?
They can look on the networking tab of cinebaums.co.uk, and Cinebaum's we are really visible. We're all about giving exposure to both our members and obviously through Cinebounce as well. So you can find us on YouTube and all of the social media channels, and obviously get signed up on Cinebounce so people can find you there as well.
Amazing. I'll pop the links in the description below if anyone wants just quick access to go and find Charlotte. They'll be there. Thank you again so much for joining us and sharing on this topic, because it's something that I love, but I'm not an expert in. So I needed to call on someone else to tell us about it.
Thank you so much for having me on today, Bethan.